Yeah, we've been having a lot of trouble with you guys were talking. Yeah, you guys were talking weather here earlier on. We've been having a lot of trouble here in Australia, especially with the changes in the humidity and everything else going. I know that every time my wife hangs my pants in the closet, the humidity in the bedroom is so much that
Yes.
all my pants seem to be shrinking on the waistline.
Morning, Jane. She listening yet?
Can you hear you, Simon?
Hey, yes. Friend from north of here has just joined us.
Hi,
Yes,
Jane.
here he goes. Mr. Turner. Another Mr. Turner. Next door to Steve Turner.
Okay, well, we're going to get started. I want to first thank Mark Hart again for acting as co-host and doing all the technical stuff, recording, putting everything up on Facebook, on the YouTube, and on the web pages and whatnot. Once again, I'll make the PowerPoint presentation available as well as the notes. I'll post them in the meeting chat at the end of the presentation. And also, if you don't get them on Facebook or through the chat, you can always send me an email and get them. I would ask that during the presentation that you mute your microphone. After the presentation is over, by all means, open it up. And if you do have questions, by all means, pipe in, jump in, ask the questions. We've got 36 people in here now. Sometimes we get up to 60, sometimes we get around the 40 or the 50 mark, but people tend to put their hand up and wave. We're on a couple of different screens. So if you're on screen number 2 and you've got your hand up, chances are you're not going to be seen. So please feel free to pipe up. After the presentation, the discussion is open, and then after the discussion on the presentation, the room is open for discussing whatever you want. So without further ado, I'm just going to go right into, if it works. And of course, that's skipped over there. Let's reduce that. Presentation. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is smooth dancing. Now, we're not going to go into all the little details and all the choreography or everything else that makes smooth dancing, but we are going to talk about the general principles or give you an overview of the principles that if you're aware of them and you understand what those principles are and how they work, you can take them back, you can play with them, and you can start incorporating those into your choreography, into your calling, into your delivery, because it's all about the dancers. And we'll get into that a little bit more as to why this is so important. But first, if we want to determine what smooth dancing is, it's necessary to pick a starting point from which to build this concept. If you ask 2 callers, you're going to get 5 opinions. They'll all be different. So for the purpose of this, what we're going to do is follow an ideal as a starting point with the definition that smooth dancing allows the dancers to move comfortably to the beat of the music without abrupt and awkward changes of direction. It's one of the highest goals of a caller to create choreographic sequences that flow well, time out correctly, and they're smooth to dance. But why is that important? Well, when you have smooth dancing, dancers feel better while they're dancing. It's less exhausting, they're not going to get tired. The dancing is easier, and as they progress and they learn, if they're dancing smoothly while they're learning and enjoying it, their dancing actually gets easier, their learning gets easier, their flow gets easier, and they are more comfortable and confident, hence they will learn faster and actually retain it longer. When this happens, even the most complex choreography can be done with great success because the dancers are feeling it. For smooth dancing, the dancers get a real dance experience, and that's what it's about. But also, if you have visitors or even other callers or even yourself, if you've got smooth dancing on the floor, you've got this visual impression that something is going on and it works and it's fun and the dancers are happy, and you just want to be part of it. And when you can be part of it from behind the mic and be on the floor at the same time, in your mind, looking at this, it's a wonderful feeling because you will know that it's smooth. It'll come back to you 100-fold off that dance floor. So the question is, how do we achieve it? Now, by now over these sessions, you've got a lot of tools in your calling toolbox. We've talked about movement mechanics and formation recognition and formation management, definitions, modules, zeros, equivalents, and early site calling and isolated site and various resolution techniques and a whole dearth and wealth of other stuff. Now, with those tools, you can build a lot of things. With just a few tools, you can build a lot of things. But now it's time to add 2 new tools to the toolbox. And these are what we call finishing tools. These are what makes your product, just like when you're building something, look like a finished product that somebody wants to have. So for any achievement, you always need the right tools or the right tool. And the 2 basic tools for finishing and square dancing, for smooth dancing, are timing and body flow. In square dancing, you want to try and achieve this communication between the dancers and the caller. This process of communication is accompanied by music. And if the caller can establish that communication back and forth between himself, the music, and the dancers, that it's free of disturbance, it's in harmony with the music, then the caller can eventually reach that goal of smooth dancing. I want to clarify right now, no caller I have ever met in my life is 100% smooth 100% of the time. It is an impossible task. It cannot be done. However, it is possible to get really close to that. What stops us from getting it 100% of the time is the choreography itself. But to get pretty close to that ideal, there's several things to look at. And the first one we're going to start with is timing. Timing is the relationship between the announcing of the calls and the execution of that call by the dancers. It's measured in beats of music. So to understand it best, you have to understand that relative to square dancing, there's 3 distinct elements of timing. The first is command time. Now, I've got a bird flying around. On command time, that talks about the number of beats that are needed to say a call. Almost all calls that you have in square dancing can be announced on 2 beats: square through, star through, dive through, boys run, whatever. Some are different: spin, chain through, spin, chain, and exchange the gears. But what's important to recognize is that command time doesn't change. It should be the same every time you call star through. It'll be 2 beats of music. Every time you call square through, it'll be 2 beats of music. Don't take more time to give that delivery of command if it's not needed. The second is lead time. Lead time is the number of beats between announcing the call and the reaction of the dancers. When the timing of when a call is delivered is very important, so you've got to pay attention to it. The delivery must meet the action. If you deliver it too soon, the dancers rush to get there. If you deliver it too late, they've already stopped and they're waiting. Either one of those can lead to a stop and go type dancing, which is not comfortable. And the third is the execution time. Execution time is the number of beats needed to execute each call. Caller Lab has a timing list out, so have a look at it and see what it takes to do these calls. Square through is 10 beats, forward and back can be 4 or 6, depending on where you are or what the circumstances are. Timing can vary from move to move. Timing of one move may have different timing for different people in that movement. So you have to pay attention to that. For instance, spin chain through has a different timing for those that are working in the centers and those that end up on the ends. Just be aware that when you're teaching timing and dancing timing have to be taught together, but the timing can be different. If it takes you 20 beats of music to teach square through, then take 20 beats of music to teach it. But when it comes time to dance it, it takes 10 beats of music. So get the dancers moving to the beat and actually dancing. Get them up to that 10 beats of music. Let them know that it takes 10 beats of music and give them 10 beats of music to succeed on it. If they learn very early to move to the beat, 99% of the time they're going to be successful in doing the calls correctly and remembering them effectively. And just to reiterate, command time is different than lead time or execution time because command time doesn't change. The other two, you may have to adjust circumstances. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Okay, timing itself explains how to best communicate with the dancers in harmony with the music. It's aiming to get the dancers receiving the right dance feeling. And that's what you want, is that feeling and experience. So when we look at timing, we talk about two things. The first is tempo. Okay, we can play music at different tempos. The speed of music, or the tempo, which means speed in relative terms, is measured in beats per minute. The average tempo for smooth square dancing today is between about 120 and 130 beats of music, or beats per minute. An optimum, or the most comfortable area, is in around about the 124 beats per minute. Now, I said this, there is a difference. Tempo is not timing. The vital thing to know and understand is how those two things work together. They're not to fight with each other. And a lot of callers don't understand the difference between tempo and timing, and they fight the two things. By choosing a certain timing, you can give the dancers the feel that something is fast, or at a slow, whatever tempo you're using. We've all had songs like King of the Road is a good example. It sounds like it's speeding up. It's not. Hallelujah on Agio Records. It sounds like it's very slow, but it's not. The delivery and the timing is what makes them flow smoothly, and yet they both go at exactly the same speed and the same pace. A very simplistic version of the difference is that tempo is how fast or slow a piece of music is performed, while timing, or the rhythm, is the placement of sounds within that block of time in a regular and repeated pattern. So tempo is measured as the number of beats per minute, where the beat is the base measure of time, and timing and the rhythm can be thought of the pattern of the music, the rhythm, the voice within that measure of time. So I talked about adjusting the tempo. You got to be really careful adjusting the tempo because it has a lot of impact on the music you're using. If you adjust it too much, too slow, you lose the song. If you go too fast, it sounds like you're playing for the Chipmunks. Tempo it can and it should be adjusted to various circumstances that you find on the floor. Okay, for instance, if you consider the age of the dancers, or when you're doing a workshop and you have inexperienced dancers, sometimes it's better to have a slower tempo. Slow it down to about 122, 124. If you've got more experienced dancers, you might want to take it from 124 to 126. You don't want to ever go more than 2 either way. It has too big of an effect on the music. Other advantages of slow tempo are dancers will have time to react. Callers can have more time to place keywords. Those are the helping words, not the filler words, keywords. Callers have more time to keep the floor control. In other words, they can help a broken square with just a word or a quick nudge here because they've got that little bit, and then they can make that up elsewhere. Tempo should, however, never be slowed or sped to the point that it's no longer dancing. 120 beats per minute is slow. That's about as slow as you should go. 130 beats per minute is about as high as you should ever go, and even that is rare today. Dancing at 130 to 136 beats of music used to be normal. It's not anymore. So how do we use that beat to create smoothness? Once we've got the right tempo, the next thing to think about is when we're announcing a call. And usually when we do this, we're dealing with a musical phrase that looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or boom chuck, 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 boom chuck. The number 1 beat and the number 5 beat in most phrases in square dancing are usually emphasized a little bit harder. That's not for the callers, that's for the dancers. It's important that you give the dancers that first beat of music. The dancer's desire to start the action is on the biggest beat, which is the number 1 beat, and in mid-phrase, the number 5 beat. Even if the dancers aren't aware of it consciously and have no idea of music structure, they feel better, they dance better when they start on the number 1 beat. Give them the first beat, give them the downbeat. Of course, it's not always possible to do this because some calls have different execution times. Not all calls have 4 beats, square through has 10, etc., etc. However, you should try to allow it to happen as often as possible. Hopefully try to achieve it at the beginning of each patter sequence. You achieve it in singing calls with each opener start figure at the start of every sequence. And for singing calls, it's even more important to start the dancers on the first beat. If you don't, you're stealing that dancer's precious beat of music of a sequence that only has 64 beats. This is done wrong on many, many called records. So consider it when you're listening to a called side of a record. A lot of the time, the records are performed as a song for the singer to show and shine. But you've got to remember, that's for the singer, that's for the caller. You want to give the dancer that beat. So give that command time early. Don't take the command side, face, grand, square on the one. You want that grand square so the dancers step off on the one. And, you know, I don't know how to do it in square view. I've been trying to figure it out, but to better hear that beat, if you're able to, you can increase the bass of the music, and then you'll notice the beat is much better and much easier to recognize. Practice it, giving the first beat to the first beat in the patter and in the singing calls to the dancer while you're practicing. You can do the same thing with a lot of your music. Practice, 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 practice. Take your songs, the command time and the delivery time to give that first beat to the dancers while you're practicing. If you do that in practice, it'll come off a lot better when you're performing. And since the dancers can feel the beat, they're going to dance more comfortably with better timing, better execution, because now they really dance to the beat of the music, and that's what they want to do. It's a natural desire. Okay. So there's several parameters that can influence the quality of lead time, and you have to consider these. Things like, what are the acoustics like in the hall? Is there a lot of echo? Is there bad sound? Is there absorbent sound? How used to the choreography you're calling are the dancers? You know, are you going to be doing new type of choreography? Are you introducing new movements? Are you doing pretty standard stuff? What's the focus of your dance? Is it a brand new floor? Is it a DVD? All of those things can influence the lead time, especially when you consider how much experience do your dancers have. Very often callers will use complex or exceptional combinations of calls to provide variety. In those cases, it's important to give about 2 or 3 beats extra lead time the first time you use it until the dancers are used to it and they know what to do. That's there to help you give keywords or helper words, and they should come 2 to 3 beats ahead of the actual movement. So step to a wave. With the left hand, left swing through, or step to a left hand wave, center start, swing through. That helper word, the first time you use it, is got to come ahead of the actual movement for the dancers so that they can flow into it comfortably. Since the combinations are unexpected, the dancers need those extra beats to react, and yet dance through that sequence fluently and fluidly and successfully. Inexperienced dancers, of course, may even need a little bit more lead time. You've got to adjust to them. It's a very special challenge to find that correct time for mixed floors. And by mixed floors, I mean experienced dancers and inexperienced dancers dancing on the same hall. Expect dancers to have different reaction times and different execution times because the figures are going to vary to what they're used to. I put this number in here, 187,423 totally random things that can affect a caller that he or she may have to adapt to on any given night. Take it as a fact. The best thing to do is don't panic. What have we got in the chat here? Beeping me. Did I know you can hear the doorbell too? No, I didn't, but I have no idea how to turn it off. The idea is don't panic. Start slow with what you do and work up. Most callers will tell you you got to feel the floor out, start slow and work up to where you find that golden section of timing and delivery. When you hit that, you want to keep it. And it's just like a marionette or a puppet master, keeping all the puppets moving together on choreographic strings. And all those strings are different lengths. It takes a lot of skill and talent. Finding that golden section of timing and delivery, which allows smooth dancing for the whole floor, is a rare thing. But when you got it, your dancers will know it and you'll feel it. So now we know what makes good time, what makes bad timing. We know how to use it correctly. Well, what's the other side of the coin? What can be done wrong? And that is a lot of things. Don't focus on what can be done wrong. Look at the consequences. And when you start looking at the consequences, what it boils down to is there's really only three essential sources of mistakes. The first one is saying the call too late. This results in the well-known stop and go type dancing. In addition, the execution time stretches out if the dancers have to stop between the figures because they think, oh, I'm going too fast, I got to slow down. The Collar Lab timing list is only valid for fluid and smooth dancing. That's what it's designed for. So if you haven't got your dancers dancing on the beat, it's not going to be fluid and it's going to be choppy. You've got to teach them to do that. The second one is saying the calls too early. You know, if you call head, square through, do the right and left through and swing through. Boys run. Oh, by the time that boys runs out, they're just finishing that 10 beats of the square through. If the dancers are rushed and they feel the next call is announced when there's still too many steps left in what they're actually doing, they're going to try and cut that figure short. What that does is that leaves the dancers with this feeling of uncertainty because the dancers are then getting the feeling of not being able to follow the calls properly. So what they do is they end up rushing instead of dancing. And once they get caught up, they usually stop and wait for the caller to catch up because they're now ahead. They've rushed through. The caller's working the timing in his head. They've finished it because they rushed to get there, and now they're waiting. This usually happens as a result of stacked calls. That's one call after another, after another, after another, too fast without proper timing. The third one is clipped timing. And clip timing is when the caller does not give the dancers enough time to execute the call, but deliberately takes away 1 or 2 beats of every call. That's not the same as saying them too early. Clip timing reduces the dancer impression of the call since the figures cannot be danced comfortably. And what happens is the dance gets more and more strained and the dancers are working twice as hard and they get tired faster because, we know we're doing this, but he's taken 2 beats. We see dancers do this all the time. For callers, think of every time you call grand square and you've got that beautiful melody line that you want to sing and it's got 32 beats. And you say side space grand square and now I'm going to sing 32 beats of music. I've still got 16 beats left and the dancers are already finished. They're at home and you're singing another 16 beats of music. Well, it works the same. How you feel when they clip your grand square on that song you've been practicing is how they feel when you clip the timing on the calls. Admittedly, clip timing or stacking is too often used as a programming tool in a poor attempt to generate excitement. It's a wrong way of doing it. It's not necessary. You can change the presentation timing, not the command or execution timing, and you can create that feeling of fast dancing to produce enthusiasm or even slower dancing to produce that melodic ballad without changing the timing of the dancing. By doing things like clipping or stacking or having late delivery, or even worse, increasing the tempo by about 4 to 6 beats of music, you create what is now become known as hot hash calling. It's not. It's bad calling. Hot hash can be done by dancing consecutively without stop, fluid mode at a high tempo, fast pace, without a lot of breaks and promenades and everything else. You don't have to speed the dancing up to 135 beats a minute to call it hot hash. If you do, you're causing unnecessary strain and work for the dancers. Sometimes it gets used for effect only, but for a full dance, no dancer can bear that, and nor would they want to. That's like saying, right, I want you guys on a treadmill for the next 2.5 hours, sweating your buns off. In my case, I've got a lot of buns to sweat off, but I wouldn't be happy doing it either. Now, I said 187,423 things. The good news is I'm not going to name. Just be aware that there's a lot of external influences that callers have to consider each and every time they call a dance. Okay? The external influences are the ones that the caller has little or even no control over. You know, this could be things such as having a slippery floor. You don't control that. An extremely dull floor. You don't control that. The biggest problem that callers hope to have when this COVID thing is over, they've got too many dancers for the little hall that they have. We can always hope. For these and many other factors, you need to adjust a little bit more and add a little bit more execution time, allowing the dancers to do that. Other factors such as acoustics will have influence on lead time. The further away the loudspeakers are from the dancers, the harder it may be for them to hear properly. So you have to make an adjustment on what you can do or how you're going to deliver it. As acoustic problems increase, the execution time gets worse. Therefore, you need to give the dancers even more lead time and likely be more selective with any kinds of helper words or things that you use. What are acoustics in relation to acoustics? The acoustics of a hall as opposed to the acoustics that are in your setup. If you have a hall that's got sound absorption, you've got good acoustics, but you could have acoustic problems in a hall, such as bounce, bad placement of the speakers will give a time delay. If you've got bad placement of speakers and echo, that gives a different whole set of other acoustic problems that can have an influence on lead time. It's the same general concept, but there's more than just sounding a hall and seeing what the acoustics are like. You have to resound the hall and pay attention to it while you're calling. Excellent question. Of course, there's other things too, such as change in the weather, a full moon, having a bad pancake for breakfast. All these things can influence reaction time of the dancers and our calling. And it doesn't matter if it's with the same dancers or with the same combinations of calls that you've done. Be ready to adapt the given circumstances of each and every performance you do. I said at the beginning, take it to heart. A caller cannot achieve 100% smooth dancing 100% of the time, especially with complex choreography that's in use nowadays. Many dancers are willing to cut back time, especially at the advanced or higher programs, for the sake of that surprising sequence or the choreographic effect. It's not a good idea. However, it's important that a caller always judges whether or not a certain effect is worth drawing that timing back. No caller should ever disregard this thought, and he or she should be aware that the fact that we're dealing with people and we compromise every time we pick up that microphone. You have to use your judgment and adapt to the dancers to give them the best performance. It's not about you, it's about them. It's not about your performance, it's about them receiving a good dancing experience. So the second thing after timing, the second tool or the second finishing tool is body flow. Now, body flow is one of those aspects of smooth, let me rephrase that. Body flow is only one aspect of smooth dancing, but it is just as important as every other tool in your caller toolbox. That includes variety, resolution, movement mechanics, everything else. A lot of them tie in with body flow, other things don't. But body flow is a very, very important tool if you want to have a finished product. I say there's 4 rules. Never use poor flowing choreography for the sake of variety. It's a big mistake that most callers make. They want to have 10 or 20 different movements and they want to get variety. So they have a tick list of movements they want to use. So they start calling them. They set up a corner box and they call veer left. But what they've done is they've set that up after a movement that a veer left doesn't flow well, just because they want to tick the box. Rule number 2, never use poor flowing choreography, don't use the poor flowing choreography to gain the attention of the dancers with a gimmick or a gotcha. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but basically you don't want to use choreographic sequences or movements that are there to trick the dancers. Gotcha, you didn't expect that, did you? All of those goals can be achieved in other ways. You can also try to think not only of one dancer when considering a combination, but you've got to think of all of the dancers. For male callers, you need to think of the ladies so that you don't wind them into the ground. For lady callers, you need to think of the men so you don't wind them into the ground. I think Betsy gave a presentation on that, and Deborah also gave a presentation on that. And mentioned it in their presentations that that's a very important thing, that you've got to look at the other people dancing. Okay. There's 4 aspects, or I said there's 4 aspects to body flow that really need to be considered. 1, flowing direction change. The dancer should never be forced to sharply change the direction of motion. Okay. Obvious examples from right hand waves. You're in an ocean wave. You have the ends run and you call bend the line and reverse flutter wheel. Oh my goodness, you've got the ends run in, then you've got them backing out to the bend the line, and then you've got a reverse flutter wheel going in again. Those are really, really abrupt direction changes. Absolute no-no. Other examples, when managing your formations to resolve a square, you hear wheel and deal and zoom an awful lot. Most people say, oh, there's no problem with wheel and deal and zoom. Okay, well, what about the inside dancer on the wheel and deal? It's a wheel, it's a left-hand turn, it's going in, it's great. But the outside dancer is doing a flowing right-hand turn, and then they've got a sharp right. It's not hard, it's not bad, but it is an abrupt forced direction change. Star through, veer left. A lot of callers don't have a problem with that. It's in almost all the basic choreography that's been around for 50 years. However, when you think about it, star through, pass through, face right for the boys, and then slide left. Okay. For the ladies, pass through, face left, and then veer left. Oh, I've got to veer left 2 positions. You've got a sharp change of direction. You're moving forward, and suddenly you've got to slide sideways 2 positions. It's not a comfortable flow. From a right-hand box circulate, if you call those facing out run and veer left. Oh, it's perfect for the person running. What about the person that has to slide over to the right and then veer to the left and go forward? And it's not just 1 spot, but it's 2 spots. It doesn't feel comfortable. Aspect 2. Dancer should not be forced to awkwardly use the same hand twice in a row. Notice I've got awkwardly in there. There are times when a right hand to right hand or a left hand to left hand use is perfectly normal. Examples like scoot back and swing through. But those general uses are with a release and there's a bit of distance. That's expected and it's anticipated. However, there are many right to right and left to left, which are terrible, absolutely terrible breakers of body flow. Obvious example, if I'm in a double pass through, so if I had the head star through, I'm in a double pass through formation, and I say center, square through 3, 2, 1, touch a quarter. Right hand, oh, right hand, touch a quarter. It's a terrible flow. From a static square, head square through 4, star through. Right, left, oh yeah, perfect for the boys, but that lady uses her left hand twice now. Star through, right and left through. There's a long argument about this one for a long time because after the star through, your hand is there, it's in the available position, it's down. To me, it's still not comfortable. It's right hand to right hand. I would use a slide through or pass through, face your partner or face the person next to you, something like that. From standard lines, star through, Alaman left. Again, lady, left hand to left hand. But as I said, you can use right hand to right hand. Think about this from an 8-chain 4 formation or a corner box. Touch a quarter, scoot back, box the nap, hold on, and square through 4 hands. No problem with that, but that goes right hand to right hand to right hand to right hand. Or from a partner line, half sachet, box the nap, right and left through. Right hand to right hand, perfectly acceptable because the hand is there and it is available. It's not awkward. So avoid the awkward use, but sometimes it's perfectly acceptable and sometimes it's preferable. Aspect 3, overflow. From time to time, you've got to change the turning direction. Okay, so I've got a couple of examples here. These sound okay, and if you think about it and you watch the boy or you watch one, you've got boys do this, girls do that, you got right hand, you got left hand, heads touch a quarter, same boy run. Star through, slide through, touch quarter, scoot back twice. Oh, great, boys run, good. Partner trade, touch quarter, girls run, star through, California twirl, slide through, Alaman left. Or the second one, left touch a quarter, girls run, spin the top. Oh, I've gone left, oh, spin the top is right hand, great, 2 of those. Girls scoot back, okay, that's novel. Boys circulate, they're moving around the outside. Girls trade, girls cross run. Yeah, they're going to the far end, the boys are sliding together. A recycle, slide through, pass through. Oh, that's a forward motion. Partner trade, that's a right hand motion. Left touch a quarter, good, all 8 circulate. Girls run, Alaman left, hey, that's pretty novel. If you look at that as it is, just looking at the words or just looking at it movement to movement, it's not bad. But, can somebody let me know if you can see the terminations on there?
Yes.
Okay, So if we look at that first sequence, for example, it reads okay, but watch the number one man here. Actually, what we'll do is we'll black out all the other dancers here. So, oh, hang on. Let's go back and look at that again. Okay, so we got heads touch a quarter, right hand turn. Head boy run, right hand turn. Star through, right hand turn. Slide through, right hand turn. Touch a quarter. Scoot back, release, right hand turn, followed by another scoot back. Oh, wait a minute, he's got to flip over. Boys run right, right hand turn. Partner trade, right hand turn. Touch a quarter, right hand turn. Girls run, it's a slide, followed by a right hand turn. California twirl, followed by slide through, followed by Allemande lift your corner. It no longer seems so comfortable. That is terrible, terrible overflow. And that's tight overflow. You also have to watch for loose overflow. If I go, oops, what happened there? No idea why it does that, but it does every now and then. This is the one that looked okay on paper if you're not following the choreography, but watch that number one lady. Left, left, right. That's not so bad. Move up. Right, left. Oh, that's great. Girl, scoot back. I've just done a 3/4 turn. Now I've done a 180-degree turn. Now I've got, this is going to happen. Now I've done another 180-degree turn. I've done a large looping turn followed by a recycle, followed by a left-hand turn, followed by a pass through and a partner trade, a left touch a quarter, a forward motion, and a girl's run around the boy. There's my corner. So when you look at that, you've got to look not only at the tight flow going around in a circle, but also the big flows. Because the big flows, if they don't change direction, it's still going to have that same feeling of I'm only going in one direction. I'm going around that race course over and over and over again, and eventually you get dizzy. The fourth aspect is what we call the offsets. I'm not talking about, one dancer offset further off than another dancer, but that is a particular concern. What I'm talking about is at the basic and mainstream level, some calls end a little bit offset from where you want the dancers to be or where your checkers are. That's part of natural dancer adjustment. But if you're not aware of it and you're not watching it, the dancers might not be in the right position for the next call. In most cases, the dancers are going to adjust to the next call, but not to all. This happens a lot when you have a mixed floor because A2 and challenge dancers are used to dancing pretty technical stuff with the offsets and you don't fix it. If they don't fix it on the basic and mainstream floor, you can find yourself in trouble when some do fix and some don't, depending on the choreography. Good example of offsets. Square through 2, trade by. Very common combination. We're in facing lines, square through 2, trade by. But the passing adjustment is a right shoulder pass, which means I've got to move over. The dancer coming into the center has to move over to the left to pass that right shoulder. I have to move over to the left to pass the right shoulder. And the next call is usually something like an Allemande left, which means there's an adjustment that I have to make way over to the right with the left hand when my left hand is 2 people removed. It's a normal adjustment. Dancers will do that, but you just have to be aware of it and allow for it. From standard lines, if you call something like pass the ocean, boys cross fold. Slide through. At basic and mainstream, let's just put these back where they were. 2, 3, blue, 4, yellow. Okay, so if I call from a standard line, pass the ocean, Well, here's the question. Just picture this in your mind. Pass the ocean, boys cross fold. Slide through, lines, go up to the middle and back. Okay. You've done a boys cross fold, you've done a slide through, they're facing couples, you call lines up to the middle and back, and you're going to do something. That happens all the time at basic and mainstream. But the offset, what did I have? Boys cross fold next? Do you really want to call lines up to the middle and back? Your dancers will adjust to it. But if you've got a mixed floor of advanced and challenge dancers, they might think that you want something to happen with those center six because they're the facing dancers. You have to be aware of that. Another offset is from lines. We hear this an awful lot. Tag the line, face left, center straight. All those kinds of things. We don't really consider it because our checkers are in a perfect line. Reset. If I call pass through, tag the line, face left, the dancers are going to adjust. But if you call pass through, tag the line, face left, and they don't make that adjustment in after the double pass through, your next call with center straight, chances are they're not going to take hands right away because they're going to be almost halfway back to back. They have to reach behind them. If you haven't taught them to make those offset adjustments, then they probably won't do it. On the other hand, you've got combinations like, reset. Say from a double pass through formation, center square through three, Alaman left. Perfectly acceptable, even though it's offset and they're not in the position for it. The dancers do it smoothly. That's a different and a very interesting aspect of body flow. And we'll come into a little bit about that, but that deals with the anticipation of what's coming up. But from the center square through three to an Alaman left, using body language and kinesiology, that would be very uncomfortable to do, but it works really, really well. So if we look at body flow in general terms, good body flow comes from good communication between the caller, the dancer, and the music. And to do that, you need a well-built language of fluent syntax. You need to know the right words delivered at the right time with the right emphasis to get that message across. The square dance language is the calls we use. And the caller has to create the sequence that allows for smooth dancing. If you don't, you get either the person on the left is wondering, what is it you want me to do? Or you get the person on the right saying, yes, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to be very happy. I'm being forced to adapt to my environment. So you have to consider things like dancer position. This task is having the dancers at the end of one call being in the correct position that allows them to execute the next call without an abrupt change of motion and with the right hand being free. When the end position of the preceding call and the start position with all of the next call are exactly the same, you're going to have smooth dancing. Now, we all know that this isn't true all the time. Center square through three, Alaman left is a good example. But habit, anticipation, allow that to be acceptable. That's a danger zone. Habit and anticipation mean you've been calling it that way for a long time. The dancers have a habit of doing it. They anticipate you doing it. But anticipation and dancers being forced through it is not any justification for bad choreography. Dancers are very forgiving, but they're not forgiving forever. They'll do it. They'll get where you want them to go. But poor choreography, it's going to dull the sharpest dancers wanting to continue to dance to you. You may get used to them doing it, but they don't want to get used to it. They don't want to be forced to dance bad choreography. I talked about dancer hands. It's not only the position that makes it important, and it's not always right hand, left hand, or right hand, or left hand, right hand combinations that are required. What is required, however, is that whatever hand is going to be used at the start of the next call is free and available for use in the call that you're going to use. You know, alternating hands is not obligatory, but you've got to be aware of it. Okay? Box the gnat right and left through is perfectly acceptable, right hand to right hand, whereas square through three, touch a quarter is not acceptable. Okay? You've got to make those decisions as you go. Momentum. There's an adage that a body in motion stays in motion. To avoid injuries such as broken arms and broken backs, you have to watch the dancer's momentum. After a figure is called where you've got a body in motion, it tends to want to keep going the same way. For a change of direction, you need to give enough space and enough time to do it. It's part of the caller's preparation to know what figures match well and what don't. For example, if I'm in a corner box or an 8-chain through formation and I call pass through, trade by, swing through, that works really well because the motion is forward and it keeps tracking forward even with the trades and all the adjustments that the dancers make. In contrast, if I get into a double pass through formation, so let's have the head star through. Picture that in your mind for a second from the static square, head star through. If I call a combination like pass through, everybody do a U-turn back, trade by, flutter wheel. Technically, that's perfectly fine. Dancer-wise, I'm probably going to get thrown out of the hall. I call pass through. Yeah, okay, so I have the centers pass through. I have everybody do a U-turn back. Trade by. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, the outsides are going to trade. The centers are going to pass through again. And then I call a flutter wheel. Those outside dancers are moving forward and compacting the square. And then I've got a flutter wheel where I've got about maybe 14 inches between the outside couple and the inside couple. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm not 14 inches wide anymore. Okay? It's awkward. It's stop turn, and it makes the crowd awkward. And what you're seeing here is the overlapping abilities that callers need to learn, need to be aware of, and need to be focused on all the time when they're calling. Okay? You need to give the dancers room. Other things in general terms are counter dancing. Very few callers today pick up on what counter dancing is. Fewer dancers teach counter dancing when they're teaching dancers how to dance movements. In order to dance turns and turning movements in a smooth way, dancers may help themselves by dancing with a certain amount of tension in their body or a little bit of resistance on the handholds. For instance, a partner trade. The hands are drawn and you pull the body slightly, gently towards each other and draw the hands back to give you that motion. Okay? A handhold means touch. It means contact. It means awareness. It also means spatial awareness where you are. It means also to help you against that centrifugal force, pulling which way you want to go or sliding somebody across. A good example is from facing lines. Half sachet. The left-hand dancer is going to draw the lady or the man across and then release as that person slides behind the other one and the other one slides in force. It's a hand contact movement. You don't say half sachet, just let go of hands and move. You can, but it's uncomfortable. Flutter wheel is another example. The left-hand dancer is going to lead the lady in and then follow along, taking the hand of the next person coming to them. That's the interactive hand contact. That's counter dancing. Another aspect of counter dancing is the inactive dancer. Inactive does not mean motionless all the time. Boys run is the best example of that. If I call from a ocean wave, standard ocean wave swing through, boys run, the girl is the inactive. She's not the one that this is directed at, but she will slide sideways into that empty position so that the man can dance comfortably. We see that inactive dancer counter dancing all the time. Heads promenade. What do the sides do? They step in to allow the heads to go around and then they step out. They haven't been told to do anything, but they've been taught that as an inactive dancer, they have a role to play in the success of that movement. Good callers teach counter dancing and proper use of handhold tension in order to achieve smooth dancing, but also to prevent the over-exuberance of many dancers that can make dancing uncomfortable. That's probably one of the more important reasons to teach good hand tension, use of hands, use of hand tension in your dancing, is to teach ladies, this is a conversation that came up earlier, how to stop the unwanted hand tension, the unwanted twirl, the unwanted pull, the unwanted push on recycle. Teaching how to stop it is just as important as teaching it. We touched briefly on overflow, but just a quick guideline here. try and avoid turns of more than one full turn, 360 degrees. For example, we use swing through center straight an awful lot. That's okay, as long as you don't do it over and over and over again. What you want to try and do is shoot for a 3/4 turn, not more than 360. Once you hit 450 or 5/4, you're running the risk of dancers are going to lose their orientation. 5/4 is too much. 5/4 is overflow. If I call center straight, fan the top, too much. Doesn't work. Center straight, center's cast right 3/4, too much. Doesn't work. Okay? And that doesn't only apply to the small tight turns, but it also applies to the larger flowing turns. If you make several turns in a row, all in the same direction, even if you have a side slide, veer left, wheel and deal, veer left, Ferris wheel, okay? They're big flowing motions, but it's all the same direction. Even that person that's doing the big flow on the outside has got that right-hand turn over and over again. It'll make him dizzy. And sometimes, as I noted, it's only 2 of the 4 dancers that are affected. Or sometimes it might, well, that is 2. It might just be the side ladies in a full sequence. So if you just look at the head man and the head lady when you're gauging your dancing, you could be missing a whole problem that the dancers are not going to be happy. Check your choreography for all the positions. As I said before, for the ladies, it's usually the men that they screw into the ground, and for the men, it's usually the ladies. So if we look at an example of that, let's just quickly look at an example of that. What? Oh, let's go to the static square here first. Okay. Watch what happens here. So I'm just getting into a corner box, step to a wave, recycle, veer left, lady straight, wheel and deal. Oh, great. Touch a quarter. Scoot back, big flowing movement here. Scoot back again, great. Girls run. Touch a quarter. Boys run. That poor lady. Oh my goodness. If you are going to call choreography like this, the only thing I can express is you want to put a little bit of money into your budget so that you can buy a mop and a bucket for when they're going to be putting some additional wax on the floor that you don't want. You're going to get those dancers dizzy. You don't want to do that. I talked about space. We talk about square breathing. It's less smooth to dance heads swing through from a static square than it is to dance from a quarter tag. If I call heads swing through, the sides back up so the head's got room. If I call heads past the ocean swing through, the sides don't have to move because there's room for them to move in the middle. That's part of square breathing. And there's a lot of movements that expand the square. For instance, getting the dancers into tidal waves and calling things like from a corner box, swing through, spin the top. That will expand a square because they have to adjust out. If you call a Ferris wheel, that will expand a square. A cloverleaf, that will expand a square. It takes more room. And then there's other movements that will contract a square so that when you call some things, it becomes uncomfortable. Example, half tag from facing lines or ocean waves or two-face lines or something. Half tag, face your partner, slide through, flutter wheel. Oh my goodness. Or slide through, reverse flutter wheel. Oh my goodness. It's not that it's so bad, awkward to call that movement because of the movement mechanics. It's awkward to call that movement because the square is crushed in. Slide through, flutter wheel, not a good combination. So now we're into body flow and size. So you want to be really, really aware of those things. If it's too tight, it's uncomfortable. Now, I talked briefly about this before. This is dancer anticipation. That is something that callers tend to forget about. Anticipation is one of the key factors of good, smooth dancing. And that falls into 3 categories. There's favored anticipation. That's when you use certain filler words or keywords, guiding the dancers to what's going to come next. If I call star through lines with that kind of an emphasis, they're going to expect what? forward and back. If I call set up for a get out and I call square through 3 and here comes corner, what's next? That's favored anticipation. I'm guiding the dancers. If I call something like lines up to the middle and back you reel, pass through, what comes next? That's favored anticipation. You're helping the dancers guide, you're anticipating or making that anticipation built into your choreography to give them what you want to do. The next is conditional anticipation. Dancers get used to rhyme schemes very fast and they react to it reflexively. The same thing happens with filler words. If you've got a line formation, it's likely that in many places today, whenever you get to lines or say the word lines, the dancers are going to go up to the middle and back whether you want them to or not. The problem here is if you use another call and the timing is not absolutely perfect, that conditioned response creates a cut in the flow. Consider the following. Lines up to the middle and back you reel, pass through and bend the line. Oh, the sad part of this is a lot of callers do this as an emphasis or a phrase to say, I want to break that habit. I want to stop you from doing this automatically. Well, the reason they're doing it automatically is because you're the one that gave them that habit in the first place. Callers that do that should give themselves a slap on the wrist. It's wrong to try and trick the dancers into success or trick the dancers into breaking a habit that you created in the first place. If you're doing it, stop it. Okay, and the last one is instinctive anticipation. This falls hand in hand what was said earlier with momentum. Dancers have a certain momentum and a tendency to maintain it. So in addition to that, when the dancers are facing each other and they're in motion, centers pass through and there's a dancer in front of them, their expectation is to do something with that dancer in front of them. Doing something that changes that instinctive anticipation becomes awkward. Okay? So if I go pass through from facing line, Ferris wheel centers pass through, partner trade, it's not expected. It's not liked, it's not wanted because their expectation is to react with that dancer in front of them. At the higher levels, there's a tendency of higher program at the advanced and challenge program levels, not being able to dance simple and basic mainstream dances, mainly because it's not their fault, it's the caller has not maintained an active level to complete this kind of calling. I just want to clarify to everybody, remember, the first movement on every program is what? Circle left. Now, the words we use are another thing. Words will help or hinder smooth dancing. You've got keywords, which are helper words, and you got filler words, which are often referred to as killer words. Filler words become killer words very, very quickly. This is what happens. What happens is you're not able to say the next call in time because you've got all these filler words in there. More important, giving the right keywords or the helper words is much more important, but only giving them as much as they need for success. You don't want to tell them everything to do and dance the dance for them with your words. You give them just what they need for success, and that goes in and out of the lead time. It also pays to think about what words you're going to use. For example, you can say, make a right-hand star or star right, but if your timing's wrong and you say star right, they might mix that up with star through, and then what are you going to do? Oh, stop, I didn't mean that, undo that, go back, make a right-hand star. They're not dancing anymore. By saying your keywords on the at the right time, you can avoid that false anticipation that the dancers might create, and you can deliver smooth dancing. Mixing your words. Helper words as filler words, one of the most common is zoom. You can hear zoom, centers back, trailers up. That works because they're talking them through it the first time. But how often have you ever heard centers zoom? That's a completely different dance action because the centers have to work with the centers. It's just a zoom. It's not a center zoom. It's just a zoom. Swing through is another one. Swing through. Everybody turn half right. Now the centers trade. If your timing's bad, they're going to go, okay, well, we turned half right, half left in the center. You want us to do a centers trade now? Wouldn't it be easier to go swing through, right, left, if it's needed? If it's not needed, you don't have to put anything in there. Now, this next slide should bring a smile to everybody's face. Conclusion. Okay. There's many aspects and tools to smooth and fun and enjoyable square dancing. Okay. In the last 20 or so sessions, we've only barely scratched the surface of these tools. Some of them included choreographic variety, intellectual challenge, which Betsy gave, and of course, smooth dancing. It's an unfortunate reality that many callers often set smoothness aside for the sake of reaching one of these other goals, like technical hyper-extended choreography, or seeing how fast they can graduate dancers up into the plus program, or even sight calling it the very first port of call without learning any foundations. Okay? It's been said that an experienced caller should only do that if the goal that they're after is worth it. Personally, I can't really think of any goals that are worth it to sacrifice good, smooth dancing to achieve a caller's goal. There are no caller's goal other than showing off how clever you might be or how knowledgeable you might be about how bad dancing feels. You can do it periodically as an aim. Sometimes it's necessary, such as fixing an asymmetric square. You may have to sacrifice a little bit of smoothness just to achieve that short-term aim, but it should never be your goal to have bad choreography or bad flowing choreography. The highest goal you as a caller should be looking for is smooth, comfortable, and successful dancing. Okay? You want your dancers to win. You want them to feel good over the long time. You want to give them that first beat. You want them to flow through the choreography, because if you do that, then you're part of the winning team as well as the dancers. You cannot reach good timing and body flow sitting here at a desktop, sitting here in a session, reading caller notes, or moving dolls and checkers. I got to emphasize, you've got to get up, you've got to get out there, you've got to get dancers in front of you. You've got to learn those theoretical fundamentals at home first, and then get up there and practice, 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 and more practice. Smooth dancing comes from smooth calling, and it's an ability as a caller that you will not get overnight, and you will definitely not get without practicing. The good news is dancers are forgiving and patient, and as long as you continue to get better and they see improvement, they're going to be happy with you and they'll support you through the long haul. All I can say is remember, it's never about you as a caller. It is always about them as the dancer. Wow. 1 hour exactly. That took a little longer than I thought it was. So let's open the floor up for some questions and discussion. I'll get that. Mark, was there anything in the chat that I might have missed?
Nope, I didn't receive any.
Okay, I'm just looking at the private doorbell. I think I explained acoustics in relation was that a comment about a typo, Barry?
It was acoustics. DNS mixed.
Yes.
Somebody asked me, what do I mean about acoustics and acoustics? And now I got another one here from Barry. It says acoustics and acoustic. Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Acoustics.
Spelling is important.
Absolutely. I was just checking to make sure you were still awake. That's my story, and I'm going to stick to it. Okay, there's no question in the chat.
I do have a remark. I have several remarks. The first one was for the dancer's ability to dance. When I was still in Switzerland, I had to go 125 kilometers from my home to the club. And after a little while of driving back and forth, I noticed that when the other car drivers can't drive, my dancers can't dance. So I had to adjust what I wanted to call at that evening during my driving to the club dance.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a longer commute to your dance, just watch the other drivers. If they drive erratically, your dancers will dance erratically.
That's one of those 187,420 other things that you have absolutely no control over.
That's I wrote it down with the keyword full moon.
Yeah.
But I have some, you said something very valuable about overflow.
Go ahead.
And when I was learning to call, I was taught that I should not exceed a certain amount of degrees. In this case, I guess it was about 360 degrees. But the same caller at the next dance called back then star promenade, the inside out and the outside in with 1.5 turns, which is 540
Yeah.
degrees. So I had a question to ask, which was not very, was not receptive, very amused.
The issue with doing a 540-degree turn, you're getting into overflow. That's the danger zone. If what he was doing there, outsides in and insides out and a quarter more, that's more of a gimmick, a one-of thing. And that's about the only place that you can actually get away is if you're doing something like that. That's what I said. For an aim, that's a choreographic flow that caller is setting up. It's never really great. But if that caller did outsides in and the insides out and then went back and promenade insides out and outsides in and then did that 3 or 4 times in a row, your dancers are going to go, thank you, I'm going to a different hole now, thank you. And they're done.
And in overflow, I have another thing written down. A favorite singing call for many dancers has been El Paso City.
Mm-hmm.
El Paso City is in its original form, a 2,160 degrees continuous anti-clockwise turn for the boys.
Walk around your corner.
It starts. Let's say it starts with a
chain across. Yes.
It starts with the do. I start with the do paso.
With the ladies back to back, men promenade outside. Do paso.
Turn left.
Corner right. Partner left.
Partner left. Turn corner right. Now take courtesy. Turn your partner. Take your corner and promenade.
Mm-hmm.
Then all 4 ladies chain. All 4 ladies chain again. Put the ladies inside in the inside back to back. The boys promenade on the outside. Find your partner for do paso. It's 2,160 degrees anti-clockwise. Some forward, some backward.
It's kind of a gimmick thing, and there again, it's something that you wouldn't want everyone all night long to be like that. But when we do it here, we usually have to kind of workshop it at least a little bit. Get them to do it right.
I don't see that, Guido. If you do a do paso, you're doing a 4 ladies chain. Okay,
yeah.
The man is doing the left turn, and then there's a static 4 ladies chain, which is broken. There's the turn.
It's 260.
But then you've got your
promenade.
Ladies back to back. Man is promenading. He's going around the outside do paso. So he's got an 180 degree left, 180 degree right, and then a courtesy turn and a flowing promenade.
No, courtesy turn, take your corner and promenade. Courtesy turn.
Partner left, corner by the right, partner left. Courtesy turn, and then he rolls and takes his corner. So yes, that's.
And then you promenade, and then you go back to 4 ladies.
That would be 180 plus 90. No, it's just 180 and 90. That's a 270 degree turn.
But the ladies chain is 360 twice. The promenade is 360 once. Then you have 180 degrees or 260.
Yes, it is. I understand that, but it's not a turn. It's a turn. It's a turn. Then it's a promenade outside the ring. Then it's a left turn. Then it's a right turn. Then it's a left turn. Then it's a 180 degree turn, and then it's a large promenade. It is general turning. It's something that you wouldn't want to do over and over. You wouldn't want that flow over and over. But for that song, I don't really see a problem with that song.
Well, meanwhile, at my age, I get dizzy. I didn't get dizzy 20 years ago. But meanwhile, I do. So if I know that a caller puts this up, I'll leave the hall for that dance.
Yeah, somebody just posted in the chat that teacup chain is another one that does exactly the same.
Teacup chain is 360.
You got a five
It-
quarter degree
depending on
turn
where
for
you
the
are,
lady.
but
You've got a five quarters chain turn for the ladies.
but
The essence is you try and avoid, if at all possible, turning more than 360 degrees. That should be your maximum. Occasionally, you may do a 540. Try to avoid it. If you do it, I said do. If it does happen to you, try to avoid doing it in the first place. You want to try and avoid that overflow. If you do have something like El Paso City that has something in it, it's something that should be used very, very, very sparingly. 360 degrees is ample turning. 540 gets to the danger zone. And if you do 540, you want to have a direction change in there, and you want to have something very soon after that in a different direction, or a big flowing movement in a different direction, such as a boys run, couples circulate with a left hand circulate, just to break up that right hand flowing. It does happen. Like I said, 100% smooth and perfect is not going to be achievable. But if you're aware of it, you can make steps in your choreography to mitigate it as best as you can.
I just wanted to point out that it might be, I don't have anything against a little overflow in a certain direction when it's feasible. I have a difficulty with, let's say, turning where the dancers don't see a transition point between two turns.
Yeah.
Where we have touch a quarter scoot back is quite difficult for the dancers because they don't have, most dancers don't have a target point. They do the touch a quarter, which is 90 degrees, and then comes the scoot back, another 180 degrees, but they don't see the transition point between the touch a quarter and the scoot back. If they see it, then the turn is not so bad.
It's a valid point. That comes also, remember when I was saying teaching hand dynamics is also part of teaching those movements. If you do a touch a quarter, both hands should be touching in that wave, not just the one you touched a quarter with, both hands. If it's a mini wave, that hand is there and you're looking across. Scoot back is there. It's a contact. It's an arm turn. It's the release. It's a reestablishment of contact. That's not usually taught a lot. You get those looking in, turn through and step ahead. Oh, wait a minute. Well, it's not exactly a turn through a step ahead. It's a released movement. It's a turn. It's not an arm turn. It's a hand turn. All these other kind of things need to be taught. And they have not been taught for a long time. This was part of a discussion we were having in the last session and earlier in this session. They haven't been taught for a long time. Sacrifice for the sake of getting the dancers on the floor dancing plus or advanced as fast as possible. We left the dancing out of the dance. Not everywhere, but in a lot of cases it is.
I have a few comments. One, when you're talking about the arm turns, I noticed with the flutter wheel, a lot of ladies just going in with a very weak handhold instead of a forearm. So
Yep.
it creates this very willy-nilly, weak, nobody knowing where they're going kind of turn.
Yep. It's that goes back to when you're teaching a movement, teach dancers how to dance, teach them how to lead, teach them how to feel that. One of the best and also the worst thing that ever came out of Color Lab was the expression, Color Lab recognizes regional differences. In your area, doing a limp fish flutter wheel is a regional difference. That's how it gets justified. It's not right, but that's how a lot of callers justify it. Teaching ladies to actually take a forearm grip with a man. Oh, why are you going to do that? Well, why? Because one, it gives the ladies control over a man who's overly strong or overly exuberant. Taking a hand grip, learning how to push down or putting that little bit of pressure. That gives the power back to the lady. It takes, you know, if you want to talk dynamics, you get a man that's doing this and grabbing and everything else. It takes 3 pounds of pressure to go like that on a hand to make somebody's arms go like this. Ladies, you can do that to a man just as easily as he can do that to you. The ideal is that should never, ever happen. If you're being taught properly, your hands, ocean wave, your elbows are in, your arms come up and they're slightly forward and your hands are slightly bent. That's where they should be. They shouldn't be up here. They shouldn't be out here. That's the reality. But we lost that teaching part. And
I also
callers,
have a question as a caller.
yeah.
For timing, is there anything, I don't know, a document or somebody that can give any advice of, on certain calls, how do you know when to call the next call? Like, I know I've always been told on a square through, on that third hand, that's the time. But when I go to other calls, especially on the plus list, I don't really know how far to let them go before.
The ideal with any kind of choreography you've got is it's a 2-beat general rule for delivering a call, and it's generally a 2-beat general rule for anticipating that call time. So if I call head square through, I want the next movement, if it's right and left through, I want that through to come on beat 8 or 9 so that when they finish the square through, my delivery is through. The next step they have is stepping forward to have that right. So you want that 1 beat. If you have dancers that are a little bit slower or a little bit faster and you want them moving to the beat, you can extend that from the 1 to the 2. But you never want to go more than 2 beats anticipation to the next call, because you want to give the dancers time to finish the call they're on, and you want to give them time to make an adjustment if it's necessary to do the next call. So asking where it's supposed to be put is very difficult, because if a movement like square through or swing through boys run, you want the boys run coming right after they finish that turn. But if your next movement after a square through is spin, chain, and exchange the gears, you're going to have to start that 5 beats ahead instead of 2 beats ahead. What you have to do is learn to place it so that the dancers have 1 beat free to say, I'm finished this call, I'm in the next call. And that's just practice. Daryl is very good at it. I know Barry is very good at that.
Can I say something?
Well,
yeah, just
okay.
Terry first, and then
I was just going to say, Katie, you know, Caller Lab does have the number, the timing of each one of the calls. It does help if you study what those are, so you know, and you can learn to count a little bit about how many times, how far ahead you are on that. It just, like you said, it takes practice, but knowing the timing of the call and how many beats it takes is the first step.
And I think you were taking it just past that, weren't you, Katie? I know square through takes 10 beats, but where do I put in that 10 beats the next call? Is that correct?
Well,
Okay.
especially because of trying to watch the dancers, especially when you're calling to a group that, you know, doesn't achieve it in the standard amount of time. So you're going by sight to say, okay, they've gone in far enough. Now it's time to say the next thing. But on certain calls, like I said, especially the plus, because they get longer and longer, it's like, are they almost done? How close? You know.
That's a visual judgment. Like we were talking about your super seniors, where you have to make that adjustment. It doesn't really matter where they're dancing. The idea is to keep them happy, but when they're finishing a call, you want that 1 to 2 beats maximum between the end of one call into the next one with everybody in the right position, so that their motion is continuous and fluid. So if you're giving them 15 beats to do a square through, at 13 beats with your group in particular, and this is just for this specific group, at 13 beats, that's when you're going to call make a right hand star or star right or whatever you're going to call, so that they can actually finish one, move into the next one without a pause. And that's a judgment call you'll have to make. Daryl, you had a comment.
Yeah. I don't know how many of the gang cue round dances as well as call square dances. but I'll say this about when to call something, all right? When it sounds right is part of the action. The delivery, time of the delivery is important. You want to, as often as possible, give the dancers the first beat of a measure to start the movement. Just like in a waltz, you want the dancers to have a measure, to hear it, get the message to the feet, start off on the number one beat of the next thing. Square dancing is exactly the same. Now, like Mel said, you're not going to be able to stay on it perfectly like they do in round dancing, because our movements in the squares, zoom, it just happens that quick. You're not going to take 2 beats or 4 beats to say it. But Mel also said that typically most of the movements take 2 beats to deliver, right and left through, pass through, bend the line, pass the ocean, swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel, minus 1, 2, 1, 2. Well, if you deliver on a number 1 beat, that gives them 2 beats for that message to get from here to their feet, and they can start off. So if you can get with the music, you want smooth dancing, be a smooth caller. Now that's timing is aside from that. The movement takes so many beats to do, but you're not going to be able to stay on that number 1 beat totally, but you have an up to the middle and back, and these adjusting type movements that you can make up and get back onto that number 1 beat delivery. Number 1 beat delivery means number 1 beat footwork, means smoother dancing, and sounds right as well.
Hey, Katie, the other thing you might do is tape yourself and what you're calling in a sequence and then try to dance to yourself, and you'll see some of those points where your timing needs to be a little bit better.
And I'm going to add on to that, Terry. You also mentioned the Color Lab timing list. Just to add on to what Daryl was saying, all of the movements on the list are usually a multiple of 2, but not all of the beats to do movements in square dancing are multiples of 2. Some are 5, some are 7, some are 9, some are 10, some are 6. Movements like forward and back, bend the line, or wave, or step to an ocean wave, wink, swing through. Even something like that, a silly little thing like that, where the dancers go, huh? But what it does is the music that the dancers are moving to and listening to, that little pause goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The dancer wants that 1, the dancer wants that 5, the dancer wants that powerful downbeat, that first phrase of each 4-bar beat to move on. They will pick that up automatically and instinctively. And if you're not going to give it to them, they're going to fight to get it. And that's where they get really, really awkward dancing. So the timing list is important, just as important as your delivery and giving them the beat. Yes, Betsy.
Well, Katie was saying about certain plus calls, she doesn't know exactly where to time it. One of the things I think you can try and do is analyze the call. What are the parts of the call? Okay, if it's spin, chain, and exchange the gears, which takes longer than 2 beats to say, it's when they're coming around to fold into the waves, to flip into the waves. So as they finish the second loop, you're going to get ready to say the next call. And if it's spin, chain the gears, it would be when the last 3/4 turn would be happening. So what you need to do is figure out what is the last movement they're going to do on the call, and then start watching for that particular movement to time when you're going to deliver the next call.
Absolutely, Betsy. I want to add on, just in case everybody is not in on this. Correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, but there's 2 aspects to this. One is calling to what we call the normal pace square dancers at that 124 to 126 area. The other is to calling to dancers where you have to adjust the acoustics and the timing. You can't be absolutely rigid in determining what you want to change. If you say square through is 10 and on 8 I've delivered the last call, well, what if your dancers take 12 beats to do a square through, and that's the way they dance it because of age, because of whatever, because of acoustics in the hall. As Betsy said, one is a guide, the second is also a guide. Watching the dancers and seeing how they react, analyzing the call, where are they in it? So if square through and now they're on beat 13 and they're taking 15, you may want to deliver on beat 13 instead of beat 8. You have to make that judgment. That's one of those judgments that callers have to make every time they're up calling, because they want to be smooth for the dancer that is on the floor in front of them when they're behind the mic. Not all the time. We had Bill waving, and then Guido, and then Daryl waving.
It was before me.
Oh, sorry, Bill, were you waving for a comment, or are you waving for your wife to bring you some more munchies?
No, I was waving because my wife just came in the room.
We've got Guido next and Daryl next.
Okay. I once devised a tool for myself to assist me in the analysis of the timing of a call. I made I had a 3-line segment. In the first line, I wrote when to call something, like spin chain through or a square through or whatever. In the second line, I had the beats from 1 to 8. And in the third line, I wrote down which action happens at that time according to my observation. So I know exactly what the dancers are doing at what beat. And I can adjust to that when the dancers are slower or faster. But I have a note when the dancers do a certain action when I have to call the next call.
Yeah. Before I get to you, Daryl, just as a note, I've only got 36 spaces on my screen. We've got 42 in here. I may have missed somebody on the other screen, so I'm not flipping back and forth between them. So if you do have a question or a comment, don't hesitate to speak up when there's a break in the speaking, because everybody's opinion and everybody's question is important. But I'm trying not to miss you, but if I do apologize. So please speak up. Go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, I am going to have to leave, but two things. One that came up earlier, the business about the regional differences. I happened to be in Color Lab way back then. And that mainly was to take care of a huge difference between the eastern half of the United States and the western half of the United States, with where the hands are going to be in a swing through in ocean wave movements. I don't know that that's that big a deal these days, but back then it was.
Yeah, it was. It was the same with do-si-do and do-pas-so. It was all part of that era of coming in.
Yeah.
What I was saying about regional differences is, we're in an ocean wave as a classic example. Canada, here. Eastern Canada, here. Eastern United States, depending on the level, your hands are side down by your side and you're just touching fingertips with your hands almost on your knees.
Well, it was a forearm grip in their swing through.
Other places it's a forearm grip. Here in Australia, one of the things that got me is an Alaman left I learned as a forearm grip. When I came to Australia the first time, an Alaman left it's like I call it a pigeon wing grip. I find it very awkward to dance, mainly because I'm not used to it. But
keep the thumb in, there's no pigeon wing to it.
Yeah, a lot of the Australians find
but beyond that, like I say, I'm going to have to leave. So, and I did want to say once again, first, nice job, Mel. You always put on a good program here. Folks, rhythm is everything. And I don't care what kind of dancing you're doing. It's all rhythm. Now, if you can train your voice without thinking about it to lock into that rhythm, that's why the 2/4 rhythm is so important. The boom chuck rhythm is so important to what we do. Our delivery needs to match that, regardless of what kind of music that you're using. You can use the most modern rappy type stuff that you want. Of course, rap is pretty good because that's 4 beats typically when they're doing that. But if you can lock into that right and left through, pass through, bend the line, the down, up, swing through, down, that's half the business of making the dancers feel good about the movement. And that's what we're talking about, smooth, right? Then the timing comes in. But first, learn to deliver properly.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody. I've got to go to church. We'll catch you another time.
Bye, Daryl.
Bye, Darren.
Hi, Darren. Bye.
See you, Daryl.
Just wanted to clarify one thing. The expectation of what regional differences are, I recognize regional difference. I now dance my Alaman left like that, with the arm up in that U.S. Western U.S. ocean wave type formation for new dancers. What I was getting at is there's a lot of things like Katie was saying, the limp fish flutter wheel, or the finger touch Dixie style that happens in some places, or the hand slap slide through. Those things, oh, that's a regional difference. No, that's not a regional difference. That's just bad calling, bad teaching, and bad dancing that has been allowed to happen because of that cop-out of saying, well, that's just how we do it here. I see Betsy shaking her head very vigorously and Guido with his hand up. So we'll start with Betsy.
I'm a victim of
Guido.
regional differences. You have been calling in Germany at a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I started there.
Have you ever called to German dancers?
Yes. For 3 years, I had 2 clubs.
What do they do when they call slip the clutch? They clap their hands.
Yep.
This
That used to be taught as a method of saying stop and release. It's a let go of hands rather than reach forward and hold on.
But the coincidence is that to clap in German is klatschen. So the imperative of the verb klatschen is klatsch. So slip the clutch.
Yep.
And any German that goes to a different country dance square dance, they all draw the heads of the others. They all turn to them because at the first slip the clutch, they all clap their hands, which nobody else does worldwide.
Well, it is done in a lot of places, but it's
Well, that's just like with any flourish. If you go somewhere and you use a flourish like that, clapping the hands for the slip the clutch or ping pong circulate or any of those things, people see that, they want to learn how to do it. I remember I did this thing when I was promenading where I would pivot back and bow to the couple behind me. And I did that at a dance, and I had every Japanese dancer in the building come up wanting me to teach them how to do that because they thought it was something fun to do, and it was just a flourish.
yeah.
I
Yes, Betsy.
want to get back to what to do about, say, limp flutter wheels or whatever. And then I have a cute story about regional differences. I've been known periodically when I'm working with a club, not teaching their class, but just want to do a workshop or I want to make it smoother, to present to the dancers that it is in your best interest to use a forearm turn because it makes the turn smoother and tighter. So the ladies who are going into the middle for a flutter wheel, you don't have to spread out wide. So it's easier then to have the gentleman be ready to come along. If he, for heaven's sakes, falls asleep, you have better leverage to bring him along. Plus, it's in the definition and it's correct.
Yeah.
I always add that at the end because that makes it a joke, but it makes my point. But you can kind of periodically review these things. That doesn't mean you're going to change people, but it doesn't hurt to work on it. An acute story is I go contra dancing, pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID. And contra dancing has the hands up hands up ocean waves, and they do the hands up pigeon wing Alaman left. And there's a contra dance caller who's very well known, who has also joined the square dance club that I call for. And periodically, as he's coming down the line and we're supposed to do an Alaman left, he presents me with a forearm just to discombobulate me.
I get that almost every time I get on the floor here.
What, that they present you with forearms?
I think one time I was dancing in Adelaide with Jeff Seidel, and first time he called an Alaman left, I think he thought I was trying to steal his wallet or something. Turned out there was no money. Oh, sorry. I can't hear you, Terry.
I said, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad.
No,
We know, we know, we know.
Betsy is absolutely correct. There's a lot of things that are let slide for the sake of getting the dancers up into the plus hall as fast as possible, or it's too difficult to actually break a habit, or somebody's done something like this for so long and it's chalked up to regional differences. And as Daryl very clearly said, that's not what the intent of recognizing regional differences was. It is becoming, but unfortunately, it's also become a catch-all for bad quality teaching and bad quality dancing. And as Betsy said, you know, sometimes you're not going to change everybody's mind, but you do bring it up periodically and then you explain. And it's because it's in the definition. This makes it easier to do this movement if you do it right, rather than do that. One of the things that was hard for me was the first time I got onto a group of dancers. I'm at a basic level dance in a hall, and the hall was filled with advanced dancers dancing basic, which I thought was absolutely phenomenal, until we called circle to a line and then a slide through. A circle to a line was lead over, hand slap as you go by, and the couple leading over will just slide, slip, and whirl around. And slide through was slap hand and go past. And I went, what the hell was that? You know, star through was not slide through. Star through was a hand slap, slide. I'm going, okay, that's not regional difference. That's just lazy dancing.
Well, and but it is and it isn't, because I can tell you that for people who have bad shoulders, that slap the hand start through works a lot better than messing up their shoulder.
It does, but this is part of the discussion we had earlier. See where my hand is right now?
Yeah.
That's the full action for the man for star through. That's the full action for the man for California twirl. That's the full action for the man for dive through. That's it. Unfortunately, for so long, this was the action, and that's why there's problems. We stopped teaching smoothness in dancing 20 or 30 years ago, and that's why we've created these problems that exist. It is too late to go and try and fix everybody now, but it's one of those things. Darren, you seem to be having either a seizure or your headset exploding.
No, man, my head's exploding from this. Look, if people dance the movements correctly, like you're saying, start through shoulders and above and things like that, that gets around all this, these arguments of, oh, my shoulders, oh, my hips, oh, my knees. There's nothing that cannot be adjusted or done correct and still be done correctly. I've got bad knees, but I can still dance all the dances. I've got dancers at my club that have bad shoulders. They can still dance the movements correctly. If you dance them correctly, you don't have to take shortcuts to get to the end result.
That said, it's also important to teach your dancers, you know, you don't have to carry that death grip on a dive through. You join hands, raise your hands up, let go. Let them go under and then rejoin hands afterwards. Where it changes before for me, I don't know if anybody here round dances, but there's a round dance called Curly Shells, circle away together, two-step into a Tamara. I had a couple, or actually it was a lady, it was two ladies who were dancing as a couple, but one of the ladies come up to me and said, oh, you're calling a star through in the California twirl, and that's really uncomfortable for the ladies, and you know, and because of the shoulders, we can't raise our hands up. And she was on the floor dancing Curly Shells, which has a twirl line, a circle away and together two-step into a Tamara.
Which is somewhere like this.
Which is this, and you know, no problem with it whatsoever. And the reason there was no problem, because they're taught to dance that movement properly rather than improperly with a man pulling and twisting and everything else. And that's why I say it's important to teach the movements properly, but it's also important, especially for male callers, to teach ladies, there's a swing and twirl, and if you don't want to be twirled, to teach that lady to say, right, your hand is like this for the man. The reason is 3 pounds of pressure. That man cannot twirl you without going, and if he does, don't ever dance with that guy again. He's an idiot. It takes 3 pounds of pressure to say, I don't want to do that.
We need to keep the men apprised of the fact that the ladies are perfectly able to do certain moves without being cranked like a pepper grinder.
That's right. And callers should be able to teach dancers, one, teach male and female dancers how not to grind like a pepper grinder. And two, both male and female dancers get taught how to stop it when you don't want to do that. Wearing a badge that says don't twirl me is one thing, but not everybody, I found that not all square dancers are able to read. So you teach them how to put pressure on the hand.
Well, I will say for myself, I don't have an issue with twirling. So I'm not going to wear that type of badge. The problem is that there are too many men that want to force the movement. So the idea is that somebody may be able to lift their arm on their own, but when it gets pulled, that's a problem.
Yeah, well, that's what I said. There's the swing, 1, 2, 3, and the twirl. That's it. That's the whole action for the twirl, and then it's down and you change hands. That's it. That's the whole action. There is none of this. And if there is, put the hand down. It'll stop.
And it's funny because
Reminded to not be, the men have to be reminded that they're not chiropractors.
when I'm teaching square dancing, a lot of people teach swing the first night. I don't. And I don't teach it the first night because they're learning so many other things. When I teach a swing, I teach the proper way. The lady's hands on his shoulders. They're not holding each other tight. They're just kind of counterbalancing, and she rolls off into the promenade. There's no twirling.
Darren.
Yeah, Mel, look, a lot of this comes back to it as callers and leaders of the activity. It's our responsibility to do the correct thing. And anyone who isn't, you're doing the wrong thing by the activity and by yourself, because it does show it to dancers if you do the wrong thing. So there you go. That's just my 2 cents.
One of the other things which we had an excellent bonus, and this is just a side anecdote, we had in Germany, dancers are very, very enthusiastic about dancing. And they have a lot of flourishes and a lot of things. Not all dancers like them, but a lot of them do. And it's everywhere. And they're very, very exuberant. When I came back to Canada, I noticed that there was a lot of dancers. My dancing experience was through a military circuit. And there was a lot of dancers that brought this back from Europe and with the exuberant twirls. And it was not quite as welcome as it was in Germany. And one of the things that we did is a friend of mine was an unarmed combat instructor, and she was absolutely great and fantastic with this. So what we did is we put on a demonstration on how to stop a twirl. Now, as I said before, it takes about 3 pounds of pressure to dislocate a shoulder, to break an elbow, and if you know what you're doing. So we put on a pseudo show, twirl, and I really reefed her around. Says, this is what you don't want to do, guys. Ladies, here's how you stop the pressure, a little bit of hand pressure. And then I said, now I want to show you this, ladies. If you get a guy that does this and you've asked him to stop, you might do this. And I started twirling, and of course she just, I don't know if any of you know Aikido, but I went up, my legs went on the air, and I went flat on my ass. It was a brilliant demonstration. And then I said, okay, so we're going to take a break right now. Everybody thought I was hurt. I said, all the ladies, I want you to go over to the side to learn how to do that. I can guarantee there was not one man that gave an exuberant twirl that night. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks before you started getting back into it, because they were all going, what did he teach them? Now, it was just for the show and the fun of it, but it had the effect of really cementing that, don't twirl a lady if she doesn't want to be twirled. And ladies, you can put a little bit of pressure down. Guys, that's a signal to you to stop doing it. If you feel pressure anywhere in dancing that is contrary to normal pressure, or a gentle tug or an arm raise, if there's any pressure that causes any pain or discomfort, stop. You're doing it wrong. Yes, Derek.
Hey, two things. Firstly, conversely to hey, men don't do this to girls. The girls have, like recently at least in Australia, I'm not sure about everywhere else, but they've got this habit now grabbing my thumb when they're swinging, just grabbing the thumb, not the hand, just the thumb. So I've had a dislocated thumb, so that was fun. And secondly, with people who are not confident, and a lot of the handholds come into the dancer's confidence level. When they're not very confident, they tend to hang on tight. I had that happen to me at a national convention, and someone fell down and held on so tight that they dislocated my shoulder. So, you know, I'm not an older person, so in my mid-20s, I've had a dislocated shoulder. In my mid-50s now, or 40s, I've got dislocated thumbs. I try to tuck my thumb in, Terry, I do, but sometimes they're just insistent. They grab the thumb rather than grabbing my palm. So just it goes both ways.
When you tuck your thumb in and then you get a dancer that's used to doing a thumb grab on an ocean wave, you tuck your thumb in and they're going,
Yeah.
Yep, they search for it.
Yes, Guido.
Yeah, there's freedom for my thumb, but when it comes to twirls, what does the definition say about twirls? It says the lady's option. So when you teach the twirl, the lady twirls, and the only thing the chant does is providing stability.
That's right.
He does not add any momentum. He just holds his hand steady so the lady does not lose her balance.
Same thing on a boxing act.
Yeah.
And a curly cue.
The chant just provides stability, nothing else.
Alan, was that you that came in screeching a minute ago?
Yes, sorry about that. I just like to raise the idea that smooth dancing, part of smooth dancing is consent. That when we learn to dance, each person's giving consent to do the call as we learn it. And so what all of these aspects you're talking about now are where people deviate from what is the normal consent to do that call.
Mm-hmm.
And there are calls where we, as the way we call it, changes the way the call itself works. Like ladies chain to a do passo. If they try to do the ladies chain completely and do the courtesy turn completely and then do a do passo, it's very awkward. Where if they just do the left, so there's examples where what you call changes what, and maybe you should be calling ladies star a half to a do passo rather than ladies chain.
That's how it used to be, and they abandoned it.
I would actually venture, and we do a lot of broken calls, you know, on the third hand or on this where it's an interrupted call, not a broken call, an interrupted call. That would be one of the ones that is perfectly acceptable as an interrupted call. But any of those kinds of things fall down into the delivery timing, the command time, and the lead time in order to be successful of it. If you call ladies chain do passo, well, they're already 3/4 of the way through the courtesy turn. It's not.
What do you think about the idea of the consent? I think that's important too.
I think it is. I think it's an unfortunate necessity that we have to go to that. You have to have consent to twirl, because consent is implied to dance with your partner. If you're taught to dance right, how to express yourself, what you don't want to do, what you do want to do with your partner, and your partner can express that as well with anybody that he or she dances with. Well, consent is done through that without the words, without the necessity of the words. Implied consent and physical consent, absolutely. I think it's a great terminology. Betsy, you had a comment, and then I think Steve Avery had his hand up.
Yeah, I basically wanted to go back to the non-circle to a line. In northern New Jersey, a lot of people who dance here do the slap and slide that doesn't involve a circle. I find it amazing that they can do a call that has circle to a line when they never actually make a circle. And my friend Dan, but that doesn't mean you can't bring it to their attention in a way that shows humor. My friend Dan one night said heads lead right, veer left, and the couple facing out run around the couple facing in. And then the club looked at him funny. He says, well, that's what you do when I call circle to a line, so I thought I'd call it your way. and it made a point. And the other thing you can do if you really want them to make circles is have them lead right and circle left halfway or 3/4 and make use of the actual circle so they get out of the habit of slapping and sliding automatically.
Circle
So
left 3/4 to a line. That's an excellent example, which I should have brought in. I would have rather called heads lead to the right, circle left 3/4 to a line of 4. That's going to make them, oh, wait a minute, I've got to actually think about that. And then you give a little bit of extra time, they'll realize that they can't do it. You're not going to break them of that habit. It'll never change, but it will get them to listen to actually see what is actually going to be called. But going heads lead to the right, and I'm assuming that was with his own club and his own group, and he's doing it with a little bit of humor. That's why it would be acceptable. That to me, heads lead to the right, veer to the left, couple facing out, run. That's what you're doing when you're. That's more of a gotcha chastisement. I would avoid unless you really know the club well and you're on.
No,
with
it was
them.
his club.
Yeah, I've seen that happen a lot of the time. I've actually seen a caller where the dancers weren't calling to or weren't dancing to them. They said, right, okay, I'm going to call what you dance, and put the music on, and then wait. And you'd have 5 or 6 squares. Finally, somebody would start moving. Oh, okay, head square through. And you wait for a square to do something else and call it, and then say, see, it works better when I do it, and you dance the way I do it instead of I do it the way you want. Those kinds of things, unless you have a really, really good rapport with your dancers and they can take it as the joke that it's intended to be, are things best avoided at all times. You should never chastise dancers.
Yes, Mel, can I say thank you very much and good night, and good night to everybody else. Nice to see you.
I would like to comment, Darren, you're
Yes,
fragile. You're fragile, and you've had a few bad incidences with excessive twirling and excessive things. Katie, you said you don't mind the twirls and whatnot, but we're not all 23 like you are.
Oh, I'm far from 23, Mel.
Some of us are senior citizens, remember? She was calling me a senior citizen earlier in one of the last sessions. I go, hey, and when you guys are seniors, well, people that are over 50. Well,
some of us have been calling longer than you've been alive.
That's true. Anyway, the floor is open for discussion. I'd love to hear some of the comments from some of the newer callers, some of the more experienced callers that want to share information. I posted the PowerPoint presentation and the handouts in the chat room, and Mark Hardy said he's going to post them up on the website as well as the video. So have a look at that. And I would like to express on the newbie callers page, on callers in training, and on the class sessions, there are a lot of good training presentations and modules. I've got 73 some odd plus presentations that have been done, and I know there's a lot more that have been done. These are an excellent chance to get in, spend an hour watching a presentation, listen to the discussion, go back and digest it with the information that's provided. Take advantage of it. It's a training thing that has not happened for, well, ever since I have been alive and in the world of calling, that you've got this kind of an opportunity to get one-on-one or in-depth on individual subjects without being fed with a fire hose. Take advantage of it, download them, go back and watch them, make a link to it on a page. Have a look at all the caller resources that are out there. The Caller Lab knowledge base is there, the data is out there. There's a lot of people that have websites. Barry posts out Behind the Mic magazine, which has a lot of information about a lot of aspects of calling, old and new. That's on the Caller Lab knowledge database as well. There's a lot of callers notes that are out there. GSI makes their notes and discussions. And if you're not sure, go to some of the local associations across the state, across Europe. I know ECTA puts out their caller, well, they used to, I don't know if they do anymore. I haven't seen one in a few months, but they put out their caller service notes in English and German. And there's a lot of great information and ideas just on local caller association web pages that they put up their own notes and services. I go fishing through them, and some of those become articles that get published. So the information's there. Take the time to go and find it. Make use of the people that are available. Anyway, the floor is open. It doesn't have to be about smooth dancing or timing. It's open for anything anybody wants to discuss. Yes, John.
Yeah, talking about the handholds and the hand gripping, we've had quite a few people make complaints about people holding on too tight. And for many years now, I've been teaching people there's no hand holds in square dancing, they are hand touches. And the way you hold your hand and pull against each other gives you that confidence that you need to be able to do the turns.
As a caller, one of the things that I was dancing one time in a synagogue, and one of the lady callers had very, very sharp nails, and she was a hesitant dancer, and I literally had blood running down the back of my hand from where her nails were digging in. And it got me thinking, so in this group, and again, this is done in humor, I said, and guys or girls, if you get somebody that's got a death grip on your hand, ask them, pretend you've got a sore hand. Oh, ease up, please, I've got a sore hand. And if they do it again, pull the hand away. If they do it a third time, do this. And I'd get on the floor and I'd say, right. And I'd take the smallest, most frail person I could find. I said, I want you to grip my hand. And they'd do that. And then I would scream as if in absolute agony and collapse on the floor with my hand like this. And that person would go into absolute shock. And I say, and if you get a dancer that grabs your hand like that, do that. I guarantee they'll only do it once. Now, I'm the one that makes myself look like a fool, but it really puts that out there for the dancers to say, you know what? Maybe I should be aware of it. That example is going to stick in their heads. And I can see a few of you laughing about that are probably going to do that sometime in the future. Right, Bob?
Oh, I would do it.
Yes, Steve.
One thing I try to tell dancers, like, and I use this example, like the different calls they have, like the forearm grips and all, is I try to get them to keep their hand open as opposed to gripping around like the forearm, keep the hand open. To me, I think that would make things a little less dangerous and less chance of someone getting hurt.
I can't remember if it was Clive Baker or Chris Pinkerton up in the New England area, but they did a really good thing on counterbalance and how to good counterbalance in your dancing. And I'm sure there's a paper somewhere on the college, the Collar Lab knowledge base from one of those guys.
I know there is one out there. I've got what I put in this presentation and what is there on counter dancing and hand grips comes from a larger paper. It was a short note in a session. I wish I could find some of it, but I've lost a lot of my old documents from my computer crash. I just had some of the notes from the schools when I put that. So I know the document you're talking about, and it's called counter dancing.
Right.
But it's all about counterbalance, contact, the touch, spatial awareness, what it actually does, how to actually dance off of each other. When you do a zoom, it's a push away. When you do, and it went into details of a whole bunch of movements that make your dancing smooth. It was like a round dancer's guide to square dancing, or a square dancer's guide to the smoothness of round dancing while square dance, something along that line. Yes, Betsy.
When I'm teaching, when I'm teaching arm turns that have the forearm grip, I teach with the thumb closed and pressure from the palm, because I'm telling people you can grip all you want with your thumb. It does not make the turn smoother and tighter. You have to put pressure, and that comes from the muscle in your upper arm. We all have one because the arm bends. Yep. I've also been known to teach, and known to teach people, if they run into somebody who's got a death grip on the forearm turn, roll your arm towards their thumb. They can, if you do it gently, you can get out without screaming and falling to the ground, and they cannot hang on. It's a self-defense move.
I have an anecdote for that. I was calling a dance in Ottawa, and a lovely young lady, a good friend of mine, but she had lost her arm, and she had one of those mechanical cervical motor arms. I'd actually danced with her about 4 or 5 times. And I thought her grip was funny before I realized she had an artificial arm. And one of the callers was actually saying, if somebody takes a grip just roll your arm if you don't want the grip. Well, her arm was with a mechanical arm, and if you weren't aware of that, because she always wore a long sleeve and a glove over it, that kind of stuff, did that. And what happened was it was an Alaman left, and the person held on too long, and her arm came off. And it was just like, and she went like this. It wasn't painful, but it just, how it happened, I don't know, but it just dislodged, and her arm came off, and then suddenly her arm dropped, so it's hanging out the bottom of her sleeve. Now you want to see a square drop really fast, and you're going, what do you do about that? And she just went, a little more gentle, please. She put her arm back on and carried on. You know, just one of those things.
They didn't grab it that time after that.
but you know, when she tells this story, you cannot help but laugh. It's just one of those things. Oh.
The other thing is about the thumb grabber. If you straighten your thumb and pull your hand down, a lot of times you can slide out of the thumb grip without hurting yourself.
Sometimes.
It's better than wrestling it.
It's been a long night.
It's been a long day.
Yeah.
Prevention's better than cure. Maybe don't get them to do it to begin with.
Right. You speak to them gently after the tip.
Do that for the future, though, Roz. It's going to be very, very hard. It takes 28 days consecutively to break a habit. It doesn't matter what the habit is, but behavioral sciences, 28 days of constant reinforcement. That's what it takes to break a habit. It takes 3 applications to reassert that habit back, and you have to start that process again. So when you go through that,
except in square dances,
even square dances, doesn't matter. But to actually get people to break those habits, I think that ship pretty much sailed for the most part. You can correct it on a night, but it'll come back. It will come back into the fore because they're not dancing with themselves or with you, everybody. They're dancing with other people, and that's going to happen. But we can make changes for the future.
I think even like you can tell everyone not to hold hands, not to hold tight, etc. But when it happens is usually when they're newer dancers, when they're uncertain, that's when they always do the grip. So you can train them and train them, but that is the time that it usually happens. One other thing on the swing, when you're saying you don't have, if you get someone that's really rough with swinging, there's someone here in Adelaide who's like that. And I actually tell, as soon as they're in their set, I say, I've got a sore back tonight, please don't swing me. And it's a reminder. And also if you've got a sore hand or anything, something visual, you can say to someone, I've got a sore arm, but if you've got a bandage around the arm, even if it's your shoulder that's sore, just that visual look reminds the dancers that there's something wrong.
I've actually seen a couple of lady dancers. I've never seen them at a dance without a tensor bandage and you know, one of those, what do you call it, carpal tunnel syndrome braces on their hand. I've never seen them at a dance without it, including my own dances when I was teaching advances. Oh no, there's nothing wrong with my arm. It just works to keep people gentle.
Yep.
Bowler's gloves.
Fight gloves. That'll help.
I dance with my thumb tucked like this all the time. Step to a wave and pass through and stuff. I try and keep my thumb tucked up like this. And there's always, every night, there's always somebody trying to force that thumb open so they can grab it. I don't mind the actual holding there, but when they're holding on like that and then they say, pass through.
I know in England they don't have that problem.
Keep your thumb with them.
You're used to the royal wave.
Oh, it's tiara, teeth, touch the pearls.
Come on, Bill. You would have taken that if you thought it.
Oh my goodness.
It could be worse. The puns are only going to get worse from here.
Thank God for that.
I
want to let you guys know I was a caller in California since about 1981, And I stopped calling about 4 years ago when I decided to take a jump off a flight of stairs and break my ankle. So that kind of blew me out of the water. But I want to stay involved with things. I'm not calling actively. I'm not calling at all anymore when it's actively my foot. And but I found out about this group, and I'm going to come and listen in and interject, because I've got 40 years of experience but under my belt of teaching stuff there. I have to laugh about something. We're talking about dive through and about the let go concept. For many years I had clubs that had family groups and they had younger kids, and so I always have the situation happen where the younger kids are in the center to make the arch, and the person in front of them is like 3 times taller than they are. And so I just tell them there, say, make the arch, but as you get close to it, for God's sakes, let go, or you're going to be taking a kid along with you or something. And it just, I always found humor was one of the greatest teaching tools in our business. I don't know if anybody thinks differently about that, but that's how I always felt.
Can I say something?
Certainly.
Can I say, yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I have a question. I call basic the beginners groups, but I have some angels that are I think they even dance C, but they're experienced dancers. And when I call Zoom, they just step out and step back. They don't roll around. They just sort of step out and step back. And I don't know why they do it, because they're there to dance, and it's much more dancing if you do the sort of the pyramid, but they do that. And especially one couple, they're elderly and they're sort of very senior members of the club. They've been dancing for years. And I don't feel that I have the position to say anything about it. Do you have any tips on how I can kind of get them to do it? Because I think with the beginners, they should do it right, so that the beginners see how it should be done. And
what you really need to focus on is you're in a position where diplomacy is going to play a big factor in trying to fix that. So when it comes time to doing the Zoom, what you can do, rather than say, you guys please dance that properly, what you would do is you get your new dancers, you get them into a double pass through, you get your new dancers, call your cloverleaf, whatever you do to get the new dancers in the center. And let's just say you're going to work on Zoom. I'm just going to work on the boys Zoom or the girls Zoom. Turn it into a workshop. Make sure your new dancers in the center. And what you call is, all right, so what you do is you're going to go forward and away and walk around behind the new dancers. Some people will do this differently. You have to be careful. Just be aware that some people do it different. They'll slide. But I don't want you to do that, because Zoom is one of those things that you can change a little bit. For instance, we can call from a column, all 8 circulate, everybody do half a Zoom. And now we're in a different formation. And then you try and you make that, you build your choreography into a workshop type tip that you're teaching the new dancers the workshop without addressing the dancers that are doing it incorrectly, without hurting their feelings, because now you're introducing the movement. Next time you call the Zoom, you're going to see that they're going to do it. And then you pair the new dancer with another dancer, and you do that half Zoom, or you set it up so that they've got to get to a different position. It's like what Betsy was saying with circle to a line. Circle left 3/4 to a line of 4. Oh, wait a minute. I've got circle, I've got a line, but that 3/4, I can't do that break and slide. I can't do that. Didn't chastise anybody, but you've created a set of circumstances where the dancers win, but you get the point across without hurting anybody's feeling.
If they are significantly older, it could be that they have balance issues and are avoiding this circling motion for that reason.
Yes, I agree.
If people do it, you point it out. This is, other people may do this different. Other people may do a break and slide. This is the way it's done. On a dive through, the hands are joined, they're raised. But, if you've got an issue, you can let go and rejoin hands. If you incorporate all these kinds of aspects into your teaching, you're going to find your dancers will find their own path. And if somebody has got a legitimate problem and you do a half a zoom, they understand they have a problem, they'll fix it. If somebody's just being lazy and creating problems, or they want to have their fun and styling at the new dancer's expense, you're going to find that they're going to fix it, because the new dancers are going to, that's not right. What are you doing? Oh, I'm just doing, oh, well, but that's not what she said. You're confusing me. You don't have to chastise the dancers by making them look bad. They're going to do that themselves and fix that themselves without looking bad, because they want the dancers to win and they want to look like the better dancer. So they'll find their own way to make it right.
Yeah. Okay.
You had a comment?
That was a very good tip. That was a very good tip.
And the other thing that I try to use with my dancers, because there's a lot of people out there that shortcut. But one of the things I try to focus on when people are in with new dancers, I say, when you're with a new dancer, remember, they've learned it this way, and if you do it this way, they'll have a better chance of being able to continue to dance with you. So I try to because if I'm with a new dancer, I don't use any of the weird flourishes or things that I do when I normally dance, because I want to make sure that dancer is successful with what they know. And I try to teach that to my other dancers.
I just had the chat window come up, and both Denise and Barry have noted that calling a half zoom, it